welcome to Using My Story. My name is Samuel. Today we got a great guest. Super excited to have him on the podcast today. So let's just take a second to introduce yourself.
My name is Calvin. I'm 26 years old, and man, it's awesome to be here, man. I've been waiting.
Awesome. Well, your number got called, and here you are, man. We're glad to have you. So, you just introduced yourself, and that's great. So let's just jump right in, and let's just talk about, what brought you to the podcast. What was your DOC?
My DOC was for sure ecstasy. I loved ecstasy. I loved doing it at raves, parties, and even just walking around the neighborhood where I was from.
Yeah.
Xanax too, because sometimes you felt so high up, you got to go to sleep somehow.
Yeah.
So Xanax.
You were on that roller coaster.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. So, Xanax and ecstasy, those are two, opposite sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
That just speaks volumes to addiction, right? There's really no label. You can just go anywhere and everywhere with it.
Yeah.
So how long have you been sober?
5 years now. So 5 years. 5 years ago, I reached that rock bottom moment.
Okay. And what would you say in that rock bottom moment, what brought you to that rock bottom moment?
I definitely say, the drugs and just losing my mind. I got to a point to where I was in a freeway. I was in a car, and something just kept telling me to smash my car against the freeway. And I remember that night I was actually drinking a lot too. So right when I was about to smash my car against the freeway, I don't know, something stopped me, and I got home somehow. And I realized, okay, I do need some help.
Yeah. It's crazy that people, like when you're talking about ecstasy and then you're talking about Xanax, it's like you're in the ultimate high.
Yeah.
Right? And you're hallucinating and you're just on that trip.
Yeah.
And then you cross that with Xanax, and then you go drink that day too.
Yeah.
But we're grateful that you didn't make that choice. So we're humbled that you're here, man, and you're sharing your story to give some people some hope. So when you hit your rock bottom and you made that choice, how have you been able to retain and maintain your 5 years of sobriety?
Definitely a lot of accountability.
Nice.
So a lot of accountability. I do have a strong support system.
Good.
I have the right people. I feel like they guide me the right direction. I think that's one of the biggest things that's helped me throughout these entire just 5 years.
Yeah.
Just being accountable to somebody.
Nice. So you have a really strong support system.
Yes.
Of people that are pouring into your life, not pulling out of your life. Exactly. That's awesome. So in your sobriety, what made you decide to agree to come onto this podcast to share your sobriety and your hope?
I'd say for sure, knowing that something did change in my life and just giving people hope that it's possible. I remember there was a moment where I was really, really addicted, and I had just bought a bunch of pills, and I remember just walking over this bridge and thinking, am I ever going to be sober? And it was like a small thought that I don't know where it came from, but I was like, am I ever going to be sober? And then, you pop again, and it's like a whole roller coaster, like you said.
Yeah.
You forget about everything.
You're all over the place.
Yeah.
You're like, that wasn't a good thought.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And that's what we call a moment of clarity, right? When you have that clear second, those clear 1 to 2 moments where you're just thinking like, man, is this my life?
Wow.
Or, more along the lines of like, is this where I'm going to be for the rest of my life? That's a scary thought when you think about it.
Yeah.
Right? When you're in your addiction, because at the end of the day, while we're in our addiction, it's the last thing we're going to think about.
That's real.
Right?
Yeah.
So, we've elaborated a little bit on your use and your sobriety. Let's talk about your childhood. What was that like for you?
So there was a big change in my childhood. I grew up in a big family. Spanish-speaking family. My mom came from Mexico. My dad came from El Salvador. So we were all MacArthur Park apartment complex, like everybody in the family living in a small, tiny apartment. Then everybody started kind of branching out. But what we learned in that area and that time of me living there, I feel like followed us. Yeah. So even when we started doing better, started living in better places, I noticed when my family would come around or we'd go back to we were originally from, there's a lot of drug use, there's a lot of violence. There was a moment where my uncle almost killed my grandpa. I had to hold him in my arms, try to keep him alive.
Wow.
Yeah, so different things like that, violence and all that, I think really triggered me to end up using later on, being surrounded with the wrong people too.
Yeah.
I think I always had bad influences growing up, apart from my mom, because my mom was the one that was always trying to get me right. And I think those bad influences are what make me run to the good influences now with accountability. So
has the counter effect.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah, and I just remember different moments where I felt like almost like there was no hope, you know?
Yeah.
And I felt like what I was looking up to in different moments were guiding me for sure the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So when addiction came and I was hooked on drugs, I just couldn't stop. It got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse.
So, you know, you're talking about your family in MacArthur Park and you guys all being in this apartment together, and then you have your family dynamic, right, where you're talking about the domestic violence and you're talking about, you know, your uncle almost killing your grandfather and your mom trying to hold the family together.
Yeah.
Right? Because there ain't no love like a mama's love, right? Yeah. So you have all these things. So the next question that I have for you is, outside of your addiction, do you feel like you suffer from mental health issues as well during that time? And if so, what were they?
For sure, I don't know how to explain it, but I think I was losing my mind. A lot of the drugs that I was using, you know, were also like psychedelics, shrooms. I was doing a lot of NOS. So I think I was doing a lot of damage to my brain to the point to where I would think there was certain things there, but they weren't there. So I remember I'd go on jogs and I would think someone was going to drive by me.
Or did you think you were actually jogging and you weren't?
I don't know what I was thinking. I think I was like floating. But I remember thinking there was cars like following me.
Oh, wow.
And there was no cars there because I would run home and I would like knock on the door and I'd be like, there's someone that's wanting to shoot me. And I remember my mom would be like, there's no one there, dude. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So I was definitely losing my mind. I'd be in bed 2 at night and I would think I would see shadows. I would see things and I didn't know what to like do because I felt like my mind was just lost.
Yeah.
It drove me into like a lot of isolation too. I went from knowing everybody to parties, big friends, like friend groups everywhere.
So depression and isolation were huge in your life.
For sure. Towards the end of my addiction, isolation took over. Wow. There was just the situation I had gotten in, and the person said he wanted to shoot me and kill me and all this stuff. So it made me stay away from the parties. It made me stay away from everything. And I remember just being in my room, just drinking by myself, you know, doing drugs by myself. And it was just probably the worst.
Wow. So, you know, when we start off, right, when we start just dabbling into things and we start just saying like, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do. And then before it actually gets a hold of your life, when would you say was a defining moment when you knew like, all right, now I'm an addict and this is going to be a problem?
I think when I was in that room, when I was in that room, because I lost everything. I lost everyone. My friends would call me, my like ex-girlfriends, all that stuff. They would try, and I just ignored them. Yeah. And I was not like that at all. Like that was never who I was. But something kept telling me you had to be in here by yourself, and I was just the drugs. Like the drugs were my best friends in there.
Yeah. So, you know, in isolation and things like that, that's when you start getting those intrusive thoughts. That's when you start thinking the most wildest things that you would have never in your wildest life, right? And now that you're sober and you think about like, dang, that moment was wild, right? Because now you have the right train of thought and you start thinking the right way. So brings me up to my next question. You know, you were dealing with Xanax and you were dealing with NOS and you were dealing with, you know, hallucinogenics, and you're dealing with alcohol and you're dealing with all these things, which is a deadly combination. Yeah. Have you ever overdosed?
I overdosed 2 times.
Wow.
One was at Coachella. It was after Coachella. I would always be the one that would bring all the pills, and there some people didn't pay that day, so all the pills I had left over, I crushed them up after Coachella and I just started snorting them. And I remember I felt my body felt different. My heart was beating way too quick. I remember even leaving the bed. I was with one of the girls and I left the bed because I was like, I don't want to die next to this girl because I'm going to die. So I went to the living room.
Wow.
And I was like, I was pouring water on my face and I couldn't feel it. I felt numb, like completely numb. And I think that night I almost overdosed for sure. So
in that moment, and while you're crushing up those pills, this is a really wide question. While you're crushing up those pills and you're snorting them, in your mind, you weren't thinking of the consequence
No way.
You weren't thinking of, this is probably going to kill me.
No way.
Was there any like thought behind that as far as like, I don't care if it does?
I don't think I was even thinking about dying. I was just thinking, I got all these pills left. These guys didn't pay, so I'm just crush them up. I'm gonna do it was like a buffet.
You're like, they're lost, my game.
Yeah, I definitely thought about that once my heart was beating way too quick. I definitely didn't think I wanted to die.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to die right now.
Yeah.
I didn't even want to die next to that person.
Yeah.
Because I was like, that would suck, waking up to a dead person.
Yeah.
So I went to the living room.
You were still being considerate while you were about to overdose, which is wild, right? All right. So, we've talked about that. I just want to know, like, what would you say outside of you crushing up this plethora of pills, multicolored Skittle bag of pills and snorting them?
Yeah.
Is there another crazy story that you want to share with somebody that may give them hope?
I'd say car crashes. If you haven't been through car crashes because of addiction, I'd encourage you to stop just because of that. Because I was in the most serious one there was 3 of them, but there was one that I totally blacked out. I don't remember how I even crashed. I just remember the firefighters pulling me out of the car, and just so much money because you go to court, you have to pay all those. I was the worst one, I was 17. I didn't have a license. I was off all kinds of different drugs. I had drugs inside the car. It was crazy because when I crashed, right before that, I went through a DUI checkpoint, and the cops just let me go. Like they just, how sometimes they just kind of let cars go? Well, I was one of those cars that they let go, and after that, I went even crazier because I was like, man, nothing can stop me.
Like, I'm unstoppable.
I'm unstoppable, yeah.
I'm indestructible.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I ended up going even more and more and more. I got to a point to where I was just driving down the street. I guess I was driving really quick, and I just totaled the car. The fire department had to pull me out. They said the only thing that stopped me from dying that night, because the car was this old Silica, had no airbags.
Wow.
There was this fire hydrant that was in front of this tree, and the impact was kind of pushed up because of the fire hydrant. So it pushed the car up instead of just smashing into the tree with no airbags.
Wow.
The fire department pulled us out. I think they saw what we had in the car. I had to go to court.
Yeah.
They didn't give me a DUI. I don't know how. Yeah, they gave me a ticket for not having a license. But I encourage people to stop, especially if you're young, so that you can just avoid all those things.
Yeah, for sure. So I know that when we started the podcast, you were talking about your rock bottom, right? And you were talking about when you were on the freeway and you were under the influence of all these drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
And something in your mind was telling you to crash into the wall and just end your life.
Yeah.
So do you mind sharing like what that day looked like and what led to that point?
So remember how I told you I was going through a lot of isolation? Well, that day I decided, I'm going to go see my friends. I'm going to go kick it with the homies.
Okay.
And we were just drinking all day. We started drinking. A girl that I was dating at the time, she ends up calling me. I end up going to go see her. And then when I'm driving back, I just kept drinking. I took a bottle with me. All day we were drinking. And I don't know what happened, but as soon as I went into the freeway, I felt like something was just talking to me. And it was telling me, if you don't crash your car against this freeway, you're going to crash into a car that has an entire family and they're all going to die. And I was like, well, I don't want to kill a family.
Yeah.
So I just kept driving faster and faster and faster. And then I got to the side of the freeway and I was just ready to just smash my car. Something stopped me.
Yeah.
Something stopped me, and I was losing my mind. Something stopped me and it got me home. And when I got home, I remember just thinking, I'm tired of this now.
Yeah.
I'm so done with this. Like 3 days after, I ran into this old friend.
Yeah.
And her life had changed.
Wow.
And last time I'd seen her, I was actually selling her drugs.
Okay, so you were the plug. And now her life changed.
Yeah. And then she ends up telling me about these like groups that they have, and they get people help.
Nice.
And I'm like, okay, I'll go. It was in East LA. It was right down the block.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll go. I end up going, and I just stopped using after that. They gave me a lot of help right there.
Good.
A lot of accountability.
Nice.
Person kept following up with me, called me over and over, and from that moment on, it was just.
So you were the plug for her negative life. She was the plug for your positive life.
Exactly.
Right? That's
should
fire.
Quote that. That's amazing.
That's fire. That's fire. So, again, we thank you for coming out and sharing your story, and hopefully somebody out there can relate to this and see that you're grateful.
Yeah.
And that you're humbled by what you went through, but who you were doesn't dictate who you are today.
Yes, sir.
So, if you have any words of encouragement, go ahead and look at the camera and, let them know, man. Just speak from the heart.
I'd say just don't give up, and stay accountable. Accountability comes it takes you so far in life. If you don't have the right people in your life, that's probably the first thing you want to change. Get yourself the right people, have them speak into you, have them hold you accountable for your actions. I know when you're in addiction, you don't want anyone telling you you're in the wrong, because that's the last thing you want to hear. But that helps a lot. They'll see the areas in your life where you can't see, like the blind sides. So be open to accountability. And, if my life can change, your life can change too.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we have links in our bio. If you guys have any help, any issues with mental health or addiction, feel free to reach out to us. We're always willing to help, no matter where you are or where you're located. I just want you guys to know that you're not alone. Those of us who are in this, using my story and a part of this team, we've been there. We've gone through it and we've made it. We've surrounded ourselves with positive people, like Calvin was saying. We've held ourselves accountable to people, and people have kept us accountable. So if you need that accountability, we're here for you. And if you need words of encouragement, we're here for you. If you need somebody to just talk to, we're here for you. If you need help, we're here. The bottom line is you're not alone, and we're more than honored to help you. So join us next time on the next podcast. Thank you guys for joining.